Father, Messiah, and the Holy Spirit be with us. Joshua chapter 10. When King Adonai Zedek of Jerusalem heard how Joshua had taken Ai and had utterly destroyed it, doing to Ai and its king as he had done to Jericho and its king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them, he became greatly frightened, because Gibeon was a large city, like one of the royal cities, and was larger than Ai, and all its men were warriors. So King Adonai Zedek of Jerusalem sent a message to King Hoham of Hebron, to King Piram of Jarmuth, to King Japhia of Lachish, and to King Debir of Eglon, saying, "Come up and help me, and let us attack Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the Israelites." Then the five kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon, gathered their forces and went up with all their armies and camped against Gibeon and made war against it. And the Gibeonites sent to Joshua at the camp in Gilgal, saying, "Do not abandon your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us and help us. For all the kings of the Amorites who live in the hill country are gathered against us." So Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the fighting force with him, all the mighty warriors. Our Father in heaven said to Joshua, "Do not fear them, for I have handed them over to you. Not one of them shall stand before you." So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched up all night from Gilgal. And our Father in heaven threw them into a panic before Israel, who inflicted a great slaughter on them at Gibeon, chased them by the way of the ascent of Beth Horon, and struck them down as far as Azekah and Makkedah. As they fled before Israel, while they were going down the slope of Beth Horon, our Father in heaven threw down huge stones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the Israelites killed with the sword. On the day when our Father in heaven gave the Amorites over to the Israelites, Joshua spoke to our Father in heaven, and he said in the sight of Israel, "Sun, stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Aijalon." And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jasher? The sun stopped in mid-heaven and did not hurry to set for about a whole day. There has been no day like it before or since, when our Father in heaven heeded a human voice, for our Father in heaven fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. Meanwhile, these five kings fled and hid themselves in the cave at Makkedah. And it was told Joshua, "The five kings have been found, hidden in the cave at Makkedah." Joshua said, "Roll large stones against the mouth of the cave, and set men by it to guard them. But do not stay there yourselves. Pursue your enemies and attack them from the rear. Do not let them enter their towns, for our Father in heaven, your God, has given them into your hand." When Joshua and the Israelites had finished inflicting a very great slaughter on them until they were wiped out, and when the survivors had entered into the fortified towns, all the people returned safe to Joshua in the camp at Makkedah. No one dared to speak against any of the Israelites. Then Joshua said, "Open the mouth of the cave, and bring those five kings out to me from the cave." They did so, and brought the five kings out to him from the cave: the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. When they brought the kings out to Joshua, Joshua summoned all the Israelites and said to the chief of the warriors who had gone with him, "Come near, put your feet on the necks of these kings." Then they came near and put their feet on their necks. And Joshua said to them, "Do not be afraid or dismayed. Be strong and courageous, for thus our Father in heaven will do to all the enemies against whom you fight." Afterward, Joshua struck them down and put them to death, and he hung them on 5 trees, and they hung on the trees until evening. At sunset, Joshua commanded, and they took them down from the trees and threw them into the cave where they had hidden themselves. They set large stones against the mouth of the cave, which remain to this very day. Joshua took Makkedah on that day and struck it and its king with the edge of the sword. He utterly destroyed every person in it. He left no one remaining. And he did to the king of Makkedah as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua passed on from Makkedah, and all Israel with him, to Libnah, and fought against Libnah. Our Father in heaven gave it also and its king into the hand of Israel, and he struck it with the edge of the sword, and every person in it. He left no one remaining in it, and he did to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. Next Joshua passed on from Libnah, and all Israel with him, to Lachish, and laid siege to it, and assaulted it. Our Father in heaven gave Lachish into the hand of Israel, and he took it on the second day, and struck it with the edge of the sword, and every person in it, as he had done to Libnah. Then King Horam of Gezer came up to help Lachish, and Joshua struck him and his people, leaving him no survivors. From Lachish, Joshua passed on with all Israel to Eglon, and they laid siege to it, and assaulted it. And they took it that day, and struck it with the edge of the sword, and every person in it he utterly destroyed that day, as he had done to Lachish. Then Joshua went up with all Israel from Eglon to Hebron. They assaulted it, and took it, and struck it with the edge of the sword, and its king, and its towns, and every person in it. He left no one remaining, just as he had done to Eglon, and utterly destroyed it with every person in it. Then Joshua, with all Israel, turned back to Debir and assaulted it, and he took it with its kings and all its towns. They struck them with the edge of the sword, and utterly destroyed every person in it. He left no one remaining, just as he had done to Hebron, and as he had done to Libnah and its king, so he did to Debir and its king. So Joshua defeated the whole land, the hill country and the Negeb and the lowland and the slopes and all their kings. He left no one remaining, but utterly destroyed all that breathed, as our Father in heaven, God of Israel, commanded. And Joshua defeated them from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, and all the country of Goshen as far as Gibeon. Joshua took all these kings and their land at one time, because our Father in heaven, God of Israel, fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. Chapter 11. When King Jabin of Hazor heard of this, he sent to King Jobab of Madon, to the king of Shimron, to the king of Akshaph, and to the kings who were in the northern hill country, and in the Arabah south of Chinneroth, and in the lowland, and in Naphath Dor on the east, to the Canaanites in the east and the west, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Jebusites in the hill country, and the Hivites under Hermon in the land of Mizpah. They came out with all their troops, a great army, in number like the sand on the seashore, with very many horses and chariots. All these kings joined their forces and came and camped together at the waters of Merom to fight with Israel. And our Father in heaven said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, for tomorrow at this time I will hand over all of them slain to Israel. You shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots with fire." So Joshua came suddenly upon them with all his fighting force by the waters of Merom, and fell upon them. And our Father in heaven handed them over to Israel, who attacked them and chased them as far as Great Sidon and Misrephoth Maim, and eastward as far as the valley of Mizpeh. They struck them down until they had left no one remaining. And Joshua did to them as our Father in heaven commanded him. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots with fire. Joshua turned back at that time and took Hazor and struck its king down with its sword, with the sword. Before that time, Hazor was the head of all those kingdoms, and they put to the sword all who were in it, utterly destroying them. There was no one left who breathed, and he burned Hazor with fire. And all the towns of those kings and their And all their kings Joshua took and struck them with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them, as Moses, the servant of our Father in heaven, had commanded. But Israel burned none of the towns that stood on the mounds except Hazor, which Joshua did burn. All the spoil of these towns and the livestock the Israelites took for their booty, but all the people they struck down with the edge of the sword, until they had destroyed them, and they did not leave any who breathed. As our Father in heaven had commanded his servant Moses, so Moses commanded Joshua, and so Joshua did. He left nothing undone of all that our Father in heaven had commanded Moses. So Joshua took all that land, the hill country and all the Negeb, and all the land of Goshen, and the lowland, and the Arabah, and the hill country of Israel and its lowland, from Mount Halak, which rises toward Seir, as far as Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon below Mount Hermon. He took all their kings, struck them down, and put them to death. Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. There was not a town that made peace with the Israelites, except the Hivites, the inhabitants of Gibeon. All were taken in battle. For it was our Father in heaven's doing to harden their hearts so that they would come against Israel in battle, in order that they might be utterly destroyed, and might receive no mercy, but to be exterminated, just as our Father in heaven had commanded Moses. At that time Joshua came and wiped out the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from all the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua utterly destroyed them with their towns. None of the Anakim was left in the land of the Israelites. Some remained only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod. So Joshua took the whole land, according to all that our Father in heaven had spoken to Moses. And Joshua gave it for an inheritance to Israel, according to their tribal allotments. And the land had rest from war. Chapter 12. Now these are the kings of the land whom the Israelites defeated, whose land they occupied beyond the Jordan toward the east, from the Wadi Arnon to Mount Hermon, with all the Arabah eastward. King Sihon of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon, and ruled from Aroer, which is on the edge of the Wadi Arnon, and from the middle of the valley as far as the river Jabbok, the boundary of the Ammonites, that is half of Gilead, and the Arabah to the sea of Chinneroth eastward, and in the direction of Beth Jeshimoth to the sea of the Arabah, the Dead Sea, southward to the foot of the slopes of Pisgah. And King Og of Bashan, one of the last of the Rephaim, who lived at Ashtaroth and at Edrei, ruled over Mount Hermon and Salakah and all Bashan to the boundary of the Geshurites and the Maacathites, and over half of Gilead to the boundary of King Sihon of Heshbon. Moses, the servant of our Father in heaven, and the Israelites defeated them. And Moses, the servant of our Father in heaven, gave their land for a possession to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh. The following are the kings of the land whom Joshua and the Israelites defeated on the west side of the Jordan, from Baal Gad to in the valley of Lebanon to Mount Halak, that rises toward Seir. And Joshua gave their land to the tribes of Israel as a possession according to their allotments, in the hill country, in the lowland, in the Arabah, in the slopes, in the wilderness, and in the Negeb, the land of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. The king of Jericho, 1. The king of Ai, which is next to Bethel, 1. The king of Jerusalem, 1. The king of Hebron, 1. The king of Jarmuth, 1. The king of Lachish, 1. The king of Eglon, 1. The king of Gezer, 1. The king of Debir, 1. The king of Geder, 1. The king of Hormah, 1. The king of Arad, 1. The king of Libnah, 1. The king of Adullam, 1. The king of Makkedah, 1. The king of Bethel, 1. The king of Tapua, 1. The king of Hepher, 1. The king of Aphek, 1. The king of Lasharon, 1. The king of Madon, 1. The king of Hazor, 1. The king of Shimron Meron, 1. The king of Akshaph, 1. The king of Ta'anak, 1. The king of Megiddo, 1. The king of Kadesh, 1. The king of Jokneam in Carmel, 1. The king of Dor in Naphath Dor, 1. The king of Goim in Galilee, 1. The king of Tirzah, 1. 31 kings in all. Chapter 13. Now Joshua was old and advanced in years, and our Father in heaven said to him, You are old and advanced in years, and very much of the land still remains to be possessed. This is the land that still remains, all the regions of the Philistines, and all those of the Geshurites, from the Shihor, which is east of Egypt, northward to the boundary of Ekron. It is reckoned as Canaanite. There are 5 rulers of the Philistines, those of Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron, and those of the Avim in the south, all the land of the Canaanites, and Meara that belongs to the Sidonians, to Aphek, to the boundary of the Amorites, and the land of the Gibeonites, and all Lebanon toward the east, from Baal Gad below Mount Hermon to Lebo Hamath. All the inhabitants of the hill country from Lebanon to Misrephoth Mayim, even all the Sidonians. I will myself drive them out from before the Israelites. Only allot the land to Israel for an inheritance, as I have commanded you. Now therefore divide this land for an inheritance to the 9 tribes and the half tribe of Manasseh. With the other half tribe of Manasseh, the Reubenites and the Gadites received their inheritance, which Moses gave them beyond the Jordan eastward, as Moses the servant of our Father in heaven gave them. From Aroer, which is on the edge of the Wadi Arnon, and the town that is in the middle of the valley, and all the tableland from Medeba as far as Dibon, and all the cities of King Sihon of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, as far as the boundary of the Ammonites, and Gilead, and the region of the Geshurites and Maacathites, and all Mount Hermon, and all Bashan to Salekah. All the kingdom of Og in Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth and in Edrei. He alone was left of the survivors of the Rephaim. These Moses had defeated and driven out. Yet the Israelites did not drive out the Geshurites or the Maacathites, but Gesher and Maacath live within Israel to this day. To the tribe of Levi alone Moses gave no inheritance. The offerings by fire to our Father in heaven, God of Israel, are their inheritance, as he said to them. Moses gave an inheritance to the tribe of the Reubenites according to their clans. Their territory was from Aroer, which is on the edge of the Wadi Arnon, and the town that is in the middle of the valley, and all the tableland by Medeba, with Heshbon and all its towns that are in the tableland, Dibon and Bamoth Baal and Beth Baal Maon, and Jahaz and Kedemoth and Mephaath and Kiriathaim and Sibnah and Zereth Shahar on the hill of the valley, and Beth Peor and the slopes of Pisgah and Beth Jeshemoth, that is, all the towns of the tableland, and all the kingdom of King Sihon and the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, whom Moses defeated with the leaders of Midian, Evi and Rechem and Zor and Hor and Reba, as princes of Sihon, who lived in the land. Along with the rest of those they put to death, the Israelites also put the sword to Balaam, son of Beor, who practiced divination. And the border of the Reubenites was the Jordan and its banks. This was the inheritance of the Reubenites according to their families, with their towns and villages. Moses gave an inheritance also to the tribe of the Gadites according to their families. Their territory was Jazer and all the towns of Gilead, and the half land of the Ammonites to Aroer, which is east of Rabbah, and from Heshbon to Ramath Mizpah and Betonim, and from Mahanaim to the territory of Debir, and in the valley of Beth Haram, Beth Nimrah, Succoth, and Zaphon, the rest of the kingdom of King Sihon of Heshbon, the Jordan and its banks, as far as the lower end of the sea of Chinnereth, eastward beyond the Jordan. This is the inheritance of the Gadites according to their clans with their towns and villages. Moses gave an inheritance to the half-tribe of Manasseh. It was allotted to the half-tribe of the Manassites according to their families. Their territory extended from Mahanaim through all Bashan, the whole kingdom of King Og of Bashan, and all the settlements of Jair, which are in Bashan, 60 towns, and half of Gilead, and Ashtaroth, and Edrei, the towns of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. These were allotted to the people of Machir, son of Manasseh, according to their clans, for half of the Machirites. These are the inheritance that Moses distributed in the plains of Moab beyond the Jordan east of Jericho. But to the tribe of Levi, Moses gave no inheritance. Our Father in heaven, God of Israel, is their inheritance, as he said to them. Father willing, we will continue with Joshua chapter 14. May our Father, Messiah, and the Holy Spirit be with us. Repent. The kingdom of heaven is near. Peace.